Hey everyone, I hope you are having a wonderful weekend. I am excited to get this video done for you on the Dutch test, on hormones, on adrenals, and hopefully answer some questions. It's not uncommon for me to see someone post that they believe they have low hormones and they're looking to increase their hormones. Maybe estrogen, maybe progesterone, maybe both, or someone who believes based on symptoms that they have estrogen dominance. So they want to know how to lower this. And the biggest reason that we shouldn't start messing with hormones without testing is because it's not safe. And as we start going over the sample Dutch report that I have pulled up, we will see why it's not safe to do anything with hormones, to do a lot with hormones, I should say, without testing. But another big reason is that the signs and symptoms of hormone dysfunction can overlap with a lot of other things. Now, some things are very specific to hormones, but a lot of things can be very multifactorial, and that's the case with a lot of things. So, when you look in a Facebook group, a Candida Facebook group, everyone believes every symptom is Candida. If you look in an adrenal fatigue one, everything's their adrenals. If you look in a mold one, an EBV, a Lyme, any of these, people get very focused on one cause. And often that's not the case. Often there's a lot of dysfunction in a lot of different parts that we need to address. So the Dutch is the last test that's run in phase 1 of the rebuilding and the rebalancing for a reason. And that is because once the body is supported, often the body has what it needs to start producing these hormones, to start, producing cortisol, or to stop breaking cortisol down as soon as it's available to the body to use. So I pulled this tab up, and I didn't choose this one for any reason other than it was one of the first ones on the list. Signs and symptoms of high estrogen levels in women. And this is just an example of what I am talking about with this multifactorial symptoms. So we have our list here. In females, having too much estrogen may cause, weight gain. That can also be thyroid. That can also be eating a diet that isn't right for your body. That can also be issues with detox that need addressed. And some of these are definitely more specific to hormones. So fatigue, we could have mitochondrial dysfunction. We could have neurotransmitter imbalances. We could have chronic infections that need addressed. Nutrient deficiencies. It could be all of those plus hormones. Let's see, what else is on here? Low mood or anxiety. So neurotransmitters again. We could have high levels of ammonia. We could have things that aren't even a physical cause, but we could have emotional trauma. There could be other emotional things that just need worked through. Let's see, low sex drive. Okay, so that could be high, that could be low, that could be you are stressed out about gaining weight, you are exhausted, you are anxious, and that is the last thing that is on your mind. So definitely need to address things from all angles. So let's see, got a Dutch test here, and I blocked out client information, but it is a 31-year-old female. And that's important to look at the age because the hormones of a 21-year-old female are not going to be the same as a 65-year-old female. And this is based on a cycling female, but the Dutch test can be run menopausal. It can be run for, an older teenager. It can be run for a male. There's male hormones. We can look at those on a Dutch as well. It looks a little bit different than this one. But for this video, we're going to base it on a cycling female. So it's always run 5 to 7 days after ovulation. So day 19 to 21 of a regular cycle. If it's not regular, then we will watch for ovulation with an ovulation kit. Not an issue there. Hormone levels will change throughout the month. That's why we want to pinpoint it to these days. So we have a good starting point on. At the point of testing, you want to see progesterone higher than your estrogen. Now, when the estrogen is higher, that's when we're looking at estrogen dominance. Testosterone is also on here. And if we go down here, we can look at estrogen metabolism. So the estrogen metabolism chart is right here. This is the easiest one to look at to see kind of what's going on with your body once it's broken down that estrogen. Now, your green is safe. Your blue is more of a neutral estrogen. Your red is unsafe. So if we're seeing high levels of blue here, then it usually indicates some gut dysbiosis, and that will be addressed later on in gut work. It's not harmful. but we definitely have some reabsorption going on. Red indicates that we need to work on liver detox pathways because we are not detoxifying that. That is building up an unsafe level, like in an unsafe pathway. That pathway, when this starts getting high, that's where we're going to be increasing chances of hormone-driven cancers and things like that. So definitely something to watch for. That's why we don't want to blindly supplement, because if we don't know how the body is processing and breaking down these hormones and detoxifying them, we could be creating quite a dangerous situation. Down here, we look at estrogen methylation. So when the toxic estrogen starts to get higher, the methylation activity should increase to compensate for that. So on here, we can also see how testosterone is being broken down. So when we start seeing like higher levels of androgens right here, that's when we're going to see things like acne, male pattern hair loss, greasy hair, facial hair. Those are all associated with higher levels of androgens. And that's how your testosterone is being broken down. In things like PCOS, we often see higher testosterone levels or higher androgen metabolites. So we would address those areas if we are looking at something like PCOS. Low testosterone in women, we don't usually supplement to increase that. Once we start supporting the estrogen and the progesterone, then testosterone is usually supported in there. So we can also look at, and I mentioned this in the liver video, but the DH, this is driving me crazy. Nothing's where it's at, where it should be when I'm at my desk. DHEA production. So we can look at this, and we want to see this in range for the age. So this is 31-year-old female. So 20 to 39, 1300 to 3000. This is 820. So this is low. So we would definitely want to work to increase this. But what I was getting at is the DHEA production here is at about, let's say, 1030 on the dial. We go down here and look at the DHEAS, and that's at 9 o'clock. So there's some issues with sulfation. This is the one that I mentioned, that pathway in the liver. So we would need to address that. Going back up to the adrenal, sorry, I'm all over the place on this. Going up to this adrenal section right here, we can see our daily free cortisol pattern. So ideally, that's going to, peak in the morning, and it's going to slowly go down, and it's going to be lower at night. So this person may start the day okay, but then within a few hours, mid-morning to afternoon, they are probably exhausted. They have a very low cortisol rate in here. Now it starts to go up at night. So that can be, and I've seen it very often, it's using blue light. It's screens at night. So TV, phone, tablet, computer, whatever you're working before bed. And that can make it more difficult to fall asleep. So this is definitely something we would want to look to correct. Now, a lot of times people will do saliva tests. And if this person did a saliva test, they would say, you have low cortisol. So going over here, they're still metabolizing they still have some metabolized cortisol showing right here. When this is very low and probably a little bit lower, and this is very low, that's when we're seeing adrenal fatigue. That's true adrenal fatigue. Many people will look at just their free cortisol and go, oh, that's low. It's adrenal fatigue. It's not often adrenal fatigue. That's not that common to see when you start looking at cortisol metabolism. So if they're doing this saliva test, and they may do it, they may have their 4-point saliva test, and they may show their curve, and they may say, okay, it's low. Well, then they're going to start adrenal support. They're going to start adrenal cortex. They're going to start glandulars, and that's going to tell the body, you don't need to produce any more cortisol, is under control, and the adrenals are going to respond to that by not producing anymore. So it can be very difficult once you start those things to get off of them. So it's, so I'll see people that will suggest, oh, this glandular is great. This adrenal cortex is great. And I'm like, stop, please run a Dutch. Let's look at what's going on first, because you might be creating a headache for yourself down the road, and you might be putting yourself on something that you're not going to easily get back off of. So if we see that the cortisol production is low, but the metabolized is high, then the body is inactivating it. So fatigue often presents itself when there's low free cortisol and there's high metabolized cortisol. That's not adrenal fatigue. That is the body saying, we need to stop and we need to heal. So let's see. Let's make sure we covered everything. We got sex hormones. We have adrenals on here. Covered DHEA. These numbers are basically what the charts are saying. I do much better just looking at the charts. We covered testosterone metabolism. Down here on it, we see some of the organic acid markers. So we run the organic acid test. That's the first test that we run. And this is the last test in phase 1. So we can kind of get a good look at, neurotransmitter metabolites are on there. We can get a look at glutathione, some of the B markers, and then we can make any adjustments that we need to based on these last results. So that was a lot, but that's the Dutch test. Make sure if you still want to look at more, make sure you go to their website. They have a sample report on there. You can read through the sample report, all the notes that are at the end of it. Instructions, if you are working with me and you need to double check your instructions or you have questions on here in the, let's see, education section, there's frequently asked questions. All the answers are on here. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post those in the comments. I will be happy to answer those for you. And I hope that this answered some questions and cleared up why I am so frustrating on please do a Dutch before you start supplementing hormones.